I begin, Laboratories KINGTON, the 105-year-old supplier of KINGTON Life Plasma, and myself would like to thank Ielken and Mr. A.K. Tan for being such pioneers in the distribution of health products. Why do I say this? Because this is a historic moment. Never before in history has such a historically significant and powerful health science ever been offered through an MLM company. Ielken's vision is clearly as impressive as the vastness of this opportunity. I also want to introduce my colleague, Ron Petruccioni. You don't have to remember his last name, just Mr. Ron or Mr. Ronald. He is a very important part of our research team and is very knowledgeable in health science. So throughout our visit here, you may equally ask myself or Ron any questions about the product. We have a big responsibility ahead of us to learn the history and the use and applications of KINGTON Life Plasma, so let's begin immediately. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share with you what I believe is the most extraordinary story in modern medical history. It concerns the profound discovery of René Quinton and how he applied it to saving hundreds of thousands of lives during the pandemics of the early 20th century in Europe. But more important in this presentation is how KINGTON's discovery of KINGTON Life Plasma can be applied to recovering and maintaining your and my health. It is a great tragedy, and it is something that I live with literally every day, that the life accomplishments of René Quinton have been largely ignored since the late 1970s. Perhaps ignored isn't the right word, but suppressed is the correct word. Like other great scientific minds in history, the discoveries of René Quinton were intentionally suppressed, probably to give way to the modern pharmaceutical industry. Ironically, with the widespread lifestyle diseases such as diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and autoimmune diseases such as arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, his revolutionary product is needed more now than ever before. René Quinton was a scientific prodigy. He graduated from the Scientific University at the age of 15, and he studied as a student in the university many subjects that included biology, physiology, anthropology, zoology, and oceanography, and took a keen interest in the science theories of his time. The most important one that he took an interest in was called the internal terrain. The milieu intérieur. This will be one of the most common words you will learn and you will experience and have to use during your time with KINGTON Life Plasma. It is, as you will discover on your own, the basis of health. In 1865, Claude Bernard and Antoine Béchamp, the fathers of modern physiology, introduced the concept of milieu intérieur, or internal terrain. One, of course, is the French, one, of course, is the English. Modern medicine recognizes that the internal terrain is one of the most fundamental principles in physiology, but has failed to build a practical medical system around it. Instead, the world focused early on pharmaceutical drug solutions which make the symptoms go away but do not get to the origin of the problem. Internal terrain will become the cornerstone of understanding this subject today, and this subject of today's presentation on René Quinton's discovery of Quinton Life Plasma. And I also believe that internal terrain will become the new direction of medicine for the next 100 years. Here is the most important first thing to learn. What is the milieu intérieur? The milieu intérieur, or internal terrain, are simply or complexly the fluids that are responsible for every function of the body. This will be a very new concept for most of you. Disease and poor health are the result of a corruption of these internal fluids, the milieu intérieur. This corruption impairs every physiological function from the immune system to the nervous system. The epidemic of poor health worldwide and the failure of pharmaceutical drugs to address this problem is causing medical experts to revisit this idea of internal terrain. The only solution to regain true health is to restore the internal terrain. The fluids that comprise this internal terrain exist in many forms within the body, and they are responsible for controlling every physiological function in every animal species. As time goes along, if you pay attention to the information that's going to be offered, each of you will have, I promise, a revelation in your fundamental understanding of the basis of health and healing. René Quinton took a strong interest in this concept of internal terrain by Bernard and Béchamp very early in his career, just after graduating from college. His intuitive genius inspired him to look beyond physiology and to explore the nature and the origin of the internal terrain. René Quinton was inspired by the work of Charles Darwin, who discovered that life began in the ancient oceans. This led René Quinton to look to the sea for answers to the nature of the internal terrain. The nature of the internal terrain. After years of investigation, and hold on to your seats, at least I had to hold on to my seat when I learned this the first time, René Quinton made an amazing announcement to the scientific world. He discovered that the chemical composition of the internal terrain of animals was nearly identical to the composition of the ancient oceans where life began. You may need some time, as I did, to fully appreciate the significance of this discovery. In one of René Quinton's most famous quotes, "We are truly a living marine aquarium," he is really saying that our cells, our tissues, and our organs are like aquatic life swimming in an aquarium of seawater. Think about that for a minute. The internal terrain includes these fluids. And all of these fluids are both mixing and separating in the body simultaneously, thousands of times per minute. And the physiologists refer to these as the extracellular fluid, the intracellular fluid, the interstitial fluid. The blood plasma is one of them. You all would recognize the blood plasma. The lymphatic fluid, many of you have heard of. The amniotic fluid of the pregnant mother, and the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay? We could spend days just on this topic. In search of the material milieu, after years of searching, René Quinton discovered that the mineral, biological, and quantum, or we can say bioelectric or energetic equivalent of the milieu interior could be harvested from a unique location in the ocean called a vortex plankton bloom. There are very few of these huge areas of plankton, which are single-celled plants and animals that inhabit the oceans, and they are very concentrated in certain areas. The one that met all of René Canton's criteria had unique characteristics, such as a rotational vortex. And this rotational vortex caused by giant currents and tides draws up enormous volumes of water and minerals from the bottom of the ocean and delivers them to the plankton-rich bloom near the surface. Now, I do want to say that the sum of all the plant life in the plankton blooms of the planet, the sum of them is the volume of the plant life is greater than all the plant life on land. It is responsible, in fact, for making 2/3 of the oxygen we breathe. The plant life on Earth is only responsible for 1/3. So you can imagine this volume is beyond our comprehension. This is, or the plankton bloom discovered by René Canton, I am happy to say is the very same plankton bloom that is used today to harvest KINGTON life plasma. This is a little administrative slide. For the purposes, so we don't confuse you, I just want to say that in Europe and in René Canton's time, this product was called plasma de Canton. Okay? Some of you say KINGTON, but the real French pronunciation is Canton. Plasma de Canton is really the same as KINGTON Life Plasma. Today it is known under several names depending upon the market location. So in the Asia-Pacific region, it is marketed exclusively by Ielken as KINGTON Life Plasma. You have a winner here, I can tell you. The plankton bloom is far more complex than we could possibly discuss here, even in 1 week. It is like a fertile oasis in a less fertile desert. The scientific term for the process that goes on inside a plankton bloom is called biocenosis. The process starts with 78 minerals and trace elements that through this process are incorporated with organic molecules, which are then processed by phytoplankton, which are then consumed by zooplankton, the animal version of plankton, and all of these then contribute to KINGTON Life Plasma. And that is what is harvested from this area. Here is another slide we could spend a week on. René Canton worked tirelessly for many years to harvest, process, and preserve this rare living fluid. And don't ever fail to use and understand that this is a living fluid. He overcame this challenge, and it probably was his greatest scientific challenge, by developing a comprehensive procedure known as the Canton Protocol. It is important to know what he was faced with, because KINGTON Life Plasma is a delicate fluid, much like a fruit is delicate. Once it is removed from its source of life, the plankton bloom, or is just like removing the skin of a fruit or the skin of an avocado, as I usually say in America. the properties decline rapidly. So only the KINGTON protocol can protect these delicate properties of KINGTON Life Plasma until it is packaged finally in glass ampules. And this slide shows some of a ship that harvests the water, some of the equipment used in the plant. Now once this water, once this special extract of the plankton bloom arrives at the plant, everyone is totally protected. KINGTON Laboratories is a pharmaceutical company, and it has the highest standards of manufacturing pharmaceutical-like products. But it only does one thing. It completes the KINGTON protocol within its doors. So once it brings it in, it is untouched by human hands. One of the most important features of the KINGTON protocol is the fact that KINGTON Life Plasma is never, ever, ever, ever subjected to any form of energy that can harm its living properties. Especially, and there are many other aspects to this, but especially, it is never heated, it is never exposed to ultraviolet light, and it is never exposed to any form of radiation. It is protected from these things. Its temperature must be maintained between 4 and 6 degrees centigrade from the moment it is removed from the ocean to the moment it is in the glass ampule. Can you get an ampule? An ampule. Just get the box. A critical feature of KINGTON Life Plasma is that its living quality is preserved by this double-tipped glass ampule packaging. René Quinton said that he could not do this without this package. Nothing can protect KINGTON like this package. One, it must only be exposed to glass. And number two, KINGTON proposed that there was a significance to the tip and the shape of this tip. Now this shape, this pointed shape, or we call it the pointed geometry, has been used throughout history by the Greeks, by the Romans, many people, to preserve energetic factors in food and solutions, and including wine. You can see here, of course we can't go into it, that there are actually special instruments to monitor the life force of the product and make sure it still exists in this package. And you can see these things, they're a little more complicated than we can go into, but they use special instruments to show, for you it would be showing that this product has chi, okay? It not only has chi, but it promotes chi, and we'll explain that at another time. This is a little bit technical, a little bit chemical, but this is just a verification for you to show that the chemical composition, and on the right are abbreviations for the chemistry of blood. They include the different minerals and trace elements, phosphorus, bicarbonate, calcium, potassium. But this shows how close the life plasma of KINGTON from the ocean is to the interior milieu. Okay? It's almost crazy. Who would guess it? And the only person that ever discovered it and promoted it was René Quinton. This is also why this product was used both in World War I and World War II as a blood plasma replacement for the soldiers. They still make this product in IV bottles, for those of you who maybe are medically savvy and understand an IV bottle, that you may use this product directly to go in and replace the lost blood plasma. With his newfound awareness that the milieu interior has an identity, we use this term, KINGTON life plasma has an identity with the sea. It's just a way of expressing that it's the same as something in the sea. René Quinton was compelled to test his assumption. Like how? He didn't know. He said, it looks the same, but really is it the same? He didn't know like we know now. He asked, can the vital characteristics of the human internal terrain be influenced or even restored by the KINGTON life plasma, harvested from this fertile plankton bloom? If we had more time, we would spend an hour just on this early work he did. But he proved his theory quite rapidly by replacing the blood 100% of the animal species with KINGTON life plasma, and they all survived. This was an amazing thing to the scientists of the day. He then tested its ability to cure disease on several hopeless patients with typhoid, cirrhosis of the liver, and severe infection, and they all magically recovered. Now, in those days, I will say, René Quinton only knew one way to approach this. They injected this product, okay? They injected this product like an IV, but he actually discovered that all one had to do was to inject it subcutaneously. Now, I say this to you with caution because we are not permitted to do this in Malaysia, and nor are we permitted to do this in the United States. And I will tell you there's very little need to do it because many years after Quinton's death, they discovered that this product had amazing effect, the same effect used orally. At 37 years old, René Quinton wrote this legendary masterpiece. It is a 500-page treatise on the culmination of his astounding discoveries and achievements of the past 7 years of his work. We have this and other books for you to see out in the foyer. Maybe you've seen them already. I don't know. I have a feeling you have. But René Quinton and his staff produced thousands of these books like this. These are the original books from 1910. This book here is simply saying l'eau de mer, water from the sea, and how to use l'eau de mer isotonique to cure pulmonary tuberculosis. Okay? This little book was a very easy one. This was how to use plasma de Quinton, KINGTON life plasma, to cure infantile cholera. Okay? And remember, during Quinton's time, there was no antibiotic. This was 30 years before the first antibiotic. And he was doing 30 years before antibiotics what only antibiotics can do. Every culture with an advanced health system publishes a reference book for its doctors and practitioners. And this reference book shows them and references how to treat disease and cure illness. The Vidal is the reference book for France, and at the time for all of Europe, actually, because the French health system was more advanced than everyone. Its first edition was in 1914. We have a copy of the Vidal in the foyer also. Maybe you recognize it. And the KINGTON life plasma was in the Vidal from the very beginning of the book. And at that time, maybe the book, we don't have a copy of the original, was probably the Vidal was more like this in 1914, okay? There wasn't a lot of medicine then. The KINGTON Life Plasma, or Plasma de Canton, was noted in 1953 as an official drug. Just like the antibiotics. They said, well, geez, it's doing what everything else does. Maybe we better make this the official drug. In this book is the most remarkable statement that I have ever discovered in my research of René Canton. This is in a section of the Vidal called Properties. Here is the properties of Plasma de Canton. And it states, now remember, this book is a world-recognized book, probably one of the most advanced examples of a physician's desk reference. And it says this. This one is from the 1975 Vidal. René Canton showed in 1904 that Plasma de Canton is identical, there's that word again, physically, chemically, and physiologically to our milieu interior, and provides the optimum conditions for red blood corpuscles and leukocytes and other blood fractions. Now here is the bombshell, as we say in English. It is possible to replace the entire, not a little bit, not 1 liter from your IV bottle, but the entire blood volume of an animal with Plasma de Canton without any disorders for the organism. Now, I will tell you, that is the most amazing medical statement I have ever read in my life. And when I show this to doctors in America, I will tell you that the only reaction is, no way, not possible, okay? And yet they've never been educated that there is 100 years already that this has been done, that it's been done on the battlefield and so on. So this tells me how suppressed this incredible substance was that's so easy to get that it doesn't make pharmaceutical companies happy. The ultimate proof, in the early 1900s, Europe was a time of the pandemics of the most virulent diseases in history, from before and never since. Cholera, tuberculosis, typhoid, syphilis, smallpox, gastrointestinal infection, epilepsy, influenza were all going on at the same time. Millions of people were simply losing their lives. The use of antibiotics, as I said, was already 30 years in the future. And especially babies and children were dying literally by the millions. The Paris Academy of Medicine, I guess perhaps in a little bit of desperation, because they didn't have any drug, hailed Plasma de Canton as the best hope in controlling the disease epidemics of Europe. So the countries got together and they opened 69 marine dispensaries, they called them. These were little free clinics. And they opened them in France, Italy, Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, Egypt, and Algeria. And these 69 marine clinics simply worked 24 hours a day to administer Plasma de Canton to the people who were sick with all the diseases from the last slide. When all this was over in 1925, the chief physician, the chief doctor of René Canton, his associate, Dr. Jean Géricault, wrote a clinical report of the results of one. He wrote more than one, but the one in particular that we have to show you, the result is of the marine dispensary of Lyon, France, a major city in France. The scope of these studies is unequaled in the history of medicine, as the subjects were followed for more than 10 years to see that did the disease come back, etc. It is so extraordinary a work, and we are very happy to have an original copy out there to show you. I wish we could open it up, and unfortunately we forgot to have the copy with us because the photos in this book cannot be believed. The statistical analysis in this book cannot be believed of all the patients. But in this book there is something very special. It is the greatest accomplishment of the marine dispensaries. And it was the elimination of birth defects, congenital diseases, and infant mortality related to high-risk mothers. Now these mothers, in this book, they found mothers that had a 70 to 91% likelihood of having a child that would have a major birth defect, like missing an appendage, die within the first year, or have some congenital disease. Typically then, it was cholera, tuberculosis, or syphilis. When they used Canton marine plasma, or plasma de Canton, on these mothers, virtually the first set, 90% had perfect children from then on. Okay? The remaining 10%, who ended up with minor birth defects upon birth, virtually all were cured over time by applying plasma de Quinton to them. So if you will have these reports available to you, you will see they had a near 100% success in curing children with birth defects. Now it is a great tragedy, and I don't have this in my notes, it is a great tragedy that this product has been held from the people for nearly 100 years. Something so simple, something that can't hurt you. Currently, there is a major biography of René Canton. It is right now only available in French, Portuguese, and Spanish. We have translated this book. Ron will show you the French copy. Here is the French copy of his book. If any of you speak French, Portuguese, or Spanish, you can have one of these and read the story of René Canton. However, we have recently translated this book into English, and it will soon be published in English. And then I have said, that's, well, lucky for you, but I hope this becomes popular here enough to justify translating it into Chinese and Malay, which would be fantastic. In 2004, and I have skipped a lot of very critical history here, okay? The most exciting time the most exciting time actually of the laboratories Canton was in the 1970s. Because in the 1970s, something very great happened and something very bad happened to the laboratory. What was great is by 1975, this product had become so popular in several European countries that it was actually paid for free by the government under their health program. If you bought it, you sent in the ticket and they sent you your money back because they believed this product was so instrumental to the population's health. And this is actually listed on one of the pages in the Vidal that says this product is supplied free under the medical program of France. However, that's the good part. But the bad part is that in the 1970s, the pharmaceutical companies ganged up on this product. They said, we have to get rid of this product, okay? Because one, no one's making money, okay? And number two, we can't sell our products at all because this product works. So they did something very interesting. They passed a law because the pharmaceutical companies had a lot of money and a lot of influence in the government, and you're a culture that understands government influence, just like my country. They passed a law that said anything that is injected must be heat sterilized. Okay, can you figure that one out? What happens if you heat sterilize Canton? bye-bye. You just pour it out. Oh, I forgot to tell you. In 2004, the French Ministry of Science held a major symposium in which they celebrated the contribution of René Quinton, and there's statues in Europe, in France of René Quinton, to his contribution to science and humanity. And this is a page from the program. It's like a 20-page program that shows all of the little major life events of René Quinton. But something very important happened in this symposium, and it was the doctors had a special day. The doctors who were still Quinton doctors, new ones, they had a day in which they gave their own symposium on how to use plasma de Quinton orally. Okay? So we enjoy the benefits of this greatly. And I, by the way, in less than 1 year from this date, this is when I discovered plasma de Quinton in a small village in the rainforest of Brazil. But that's another story. We've already figured out that Quinton Life Plasma is a long set of words, and we've already abbreviated to KLP, okay? It could be many things. It could be Kuala Lumpur Plasma. And maybe it will become that. But it is one of the most, it probably is the most, really, multi-dimensional health product in history. Because it simply works, and I think you had a good idea of what this internal terrain is. It works on the master control system of the human physiology. In fact, it doesn't work on it, it is it. It can be applied to nearly every health condition and aspect of health maintenance. It may, especially because the types of diseases we have now, and probably a lot of you don't realize this, but the combinations of disease now that people have are 20 times more complex than during the time of René Quinton. Because your immune systems, my immune system, have been so compromised by our environment, by our food, by the pollution, by the mercury coming from coal burning. It's a great tragedy. I mean, all of you know it. And it makes it much more challenging. So when you use Quinton Life Plasma to do health work, you may require, and you will probably, if you're doing some serious stuff, you are going to require a lifestyle modification, a dietary modification to get the most effective results. For instance, I have to say that since I've been here in Malaysia, I haven't been very happy what I see Malaysians eat for breakfast, okay? I see plates for breakfast. I see plates of donuts being eaten, okay? Incredible sugary stuff. And this is not good. This makes it a great challenge for even plasma de Quinton. Here is probably the foremost. This works no matter what. No matter what you do, this will work. Virtually everyone suffers from a lack of minerals and trace elements. There's only one place on the planet where all 78 trace elements exist, and that is in the ocean. Now, you people are very lucky because a lot of you take spirulina. And spirulina is a nice dose of the 78 trace elements. And I encourage you to be serious spirulina users. Now, they don't have the same this identity factor that plasma de Quinton, but it's a great ally to plasma de Quinton. And this very famous guy called Linus Pauling I think I'm pretty sure he was the only person who won the Nobel Prize twice for the same subject, something like that. And I don't know if you have this in your literature. You sound very familiar with him, that every disease can be traced to. I mean, it's a very, very important guy saying a very important message. So you never can really get enough trace elements. Why do we have this problem? Because your food isn't any good anymore. Even if it's the fresh food, it's not good anymore. Over the past century, intensive farming practices have led to a severe depletion in minerals and trace elements that exist in our food because it's not in the soil. Here is a statistic from a scientific journal. North America, an 85% loss of the availability of minerals and trace elements. Asia, 76%. Europe, 72%. South America, 76%. Africa, 74%. And Australia, 55%. That is pretty bad. Probably one of the great applications of KINGTON Life Plasma is in lifestyle diseases. Conditions such as diabetes type 2, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity are all symptoms of a highly corrupt internal terrain. KINGTON Life Plasma can be instrumental in addressing all of these conditions. The autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases far exceed the number of people that have cancer in the world. And this is the fast, silent group of diseases that's coming upon us. Diabetes type 1, you're born with this typically. Multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia are all indications of a corrupt terrain, many of which can be inherited. These are however, I want you to respect this. These are very complex health conditions that will require the prolonged use of KINGTON Life Plasma and also require extensive lifestyle and dietary changes and other support therapies. For instance, you might be benefited by a special herb. You might benefit from taking turmeric and vitamin D3. Now we're going to go through a list rather rapidly. If it were up to Ron and I, we would be here on this section until midnight at least, okay? First of all, general nutrition. This is just to give you a taste of how we see it and how the world sees this product. General nutrition, of course. And you can read, on your own, you can read the small little comments on it. Cardiovascular health, virtually every aspect of it. Neurological support, something that's coming upon the world very fast. I mean, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Joint health. Probably many of you have. Waking up in the morning, you know that you're not it takes time to warm up. This will change you. I am far too young to have any of these problems. Because of KINGTON Life Plasma, I might add. Liver health. Detoxification is a very great capability of KINGTON Life Plasma because the identity with your milieu interior, it just says, hey, you don't belong here, you don't belong here. It works in this way. It excludes things because it feels it is the new plasma, okay? Kidney and urinary health. Endocrinology. Detoxification in general. Insomnia. This is a complex one, but if you take your isotonic, typically before you go an hour before you get, most of you will have a new kind of sleep. And you may need to try it for several days. Osteoporosis. You always need all the trace elements with calcium to treat osteoporosis. Dehydration, allergic conditions, skin conditions of every kind, inflammatory conditions. These are growing rapidly, especially Crohn's disease. Gastrointestinal conditions, dental conditions. I will tell you, here is amazing a dental thing. You won't be able to do many of these here in Malaysia. But there are doctors in Europe who simply do something, they micro-inject. I mean, just little drops of this into the gums of their patients, and it regrows the bone in the jaw, okay? There is a very similar procedure in which they simply have an apparatus that injects the KINGTON Life Plasma into simultaneously all of the spinal discs, okay? And they can turn a 70-year-old spinal disc into a 17-year-old spinal disc. Please don't inject into your neighbor's back tomorrow. Of course, eye conditions, ear, nose, and throat conditions, fertility. Fertility, prenatal and postnatal, are probably the greatest glories of KINGTON Life Plasma, okay? These, like, don't have a baby without it, all right? I mean it seriously. Do not have a baby without it. In fact, the babies during KINGTON time, because many babies, very much higher even than now, babies were coming out with all kinds of diseases because the mothers had the diseases. But when they used KINGTON, the babies were so perfect that it became a common term, the KINGTON baby. Okay, KINGTON baby was a term during his entire life. Pediatrics. This is very complex stuff. All the ADD, the neuropsychic problems, very related to trace mineral chemistries, menopausal gynecology, colonic irrigation. Some of you, I would love to discuss this with you, and it's something that should be done in spas. This is one of the most powerful things you can do with KINGTON. And of course, all the anti-aging objectives are assisted by KINGTON Life Plasma. The facts section, of course, well, that could easily go for 4 hours itself. Ron is going to help me in this. We're going to just kind of go through a practical use of how we use the product. The first thing is breaking the ampule. One is, you notice that there are little, do you have these little plastic discs that come in the box? Yes. Okay. Do they say KINGTON Life Plasma? Yes. That was nice. I don't think I ever saw one yet, but that's great. But of course you use that disc to break the ampule, okay? But you don't have to use that disc. You can use, you want to get there, huh? Yeah. You can use a tissue, and I shouldn't say this, but I am. None of us use anything to do it, okay? You just get used to it. I don't know why. There's some people who can just snap it with one hand. I haven't developed that one yet. But you do have to be careful when you use this. It is glass. And some people, if you're maybe teaching children or something, it's not unusual if you want to be ultra super incredibly careful, to break it and put it in a glass. And make sure, okay, there's no extra glass in it, and then use it from there. Okay, it's one way to go. But Ron's going to show you how to break it, how he holds one tip slightly down and breaks the tip. But not with your fingers, with the tissue. Hold it down, please. Yeah. Yeah. Now, at this point, this has a lot of potential just like this. Ron's going to show you that if you turn it upside down, the water doesn't, the life plasma doesn't come out. This is good. Now he's going to show you, by holding it upside down, how we can make it come out in a very controlled fashion. Okay? This is an automatic dispenser of KINGTON Life Plasma. Now, you have your tissue still? Very good. At this time, American mothers, and this is American mothers, all who are introduced to KINGTON Life Plasma, this is the perfect time, not just for their children, but for themselves and for us. I do this every day. Ron does this every day. To use this for hygiene. Now, we didn't even talk really about hygiene, but hygiene is one of the undiscovered sources of problems in health, because you have mucosal terrain, not just internal terrain, but the mucosal terrain. The mucosal terrain, for instance, when mucosal terrain is corrupted, this is when you are more subjected to colds and allergies and influenza. You must have a restored mucosal terrain. And nothing restores your mucosal terrain better than KINGTON Life Plasma. So Ron is going to show you how in the morning he might get up and just, okay, he's going to do a nasal, he's going to use this for nasal hygiene. He will inhale this into each nostril. It will get deep into his sinuses, and those of you who have sinusitis or rhinitis, it won't last long by doing this, okay? Now, Ron can also at this time, if he has dry eye or eye issues, he can put this directly in the eye, okay? Okay? And it is a wonderful, do this before you go to bed. You will just love it. Just leave it in there. Go to sleep and just leave it. It's just very beautiful. Now, you want to be careful that you do not have, of course, you do not have like makeup that it's going to put in your eye. I mean, you figured this out. You can do the same thing. I went swimming at the pool yesterday, and some kind of weird thing happened in my ear that caused me not to like hear as clearly. Something was obstructing or damaged or something. I don't know what I did. But before I took a shower, I put this in the ear, and by the time I was shaving, it was gone. So I enjoyed the benefit of this yesterday in my ear. Now, then, after the mother does this with herself and her children, look, you have most of the plasma still left. You'll need a little bit for hygiene. And then you can drink the rest of this. This is your morning, 15 minutes before you eat, oral use of KINGTON Life Plasma. Now, you may procure on your own. I know that Ielken is going to help you with this, because, you know, getting products in is literally, in countries to countries, is an insane, you have to be insane to even think about doing it, because the restrictions are so ridiculous now. But you can take little glass bottles that KINGTON is going to help, that Ielken is going to help you procure like this. And you can, instead of using it direct from the ampule, you can put this product, these ampules, break it into a little dispenser like this. These are available all over the world. And you can spray them in your nose, in your child's nose, and you can spray them in your eyes or spray it on your skin. It is magnificent. Many women tell us that it is magnificent. Before they go to bed, they spray their face with isotonic, okay? And they discover new things. And I also know you have to be really interested in kind of cosmetic things, which I don't have time for. But I do know that it is common in France and Spain to spray this in the hair by hairstylists to achieve some special effect, okay? And also, it is very interesting, I find it interesting, for some people that by spraying the hair and the scalp with this and just letting it dry, it changes the quality of your hair. It does some kind of restoration. So explore all these neat applications because you will discover some very new things. How much sodium is in, so some people ask, my God, I'm drinking seawater, so how much sodium is in this seawater? And can my customer use it if they're on a salt-free diet? Well, I just want to say every single person can take KINGTON Life Plasma, even though they're on a salt-restricted diet, and here's why. There's hardly any salt in KINGTON Life Plasma, and we won't go through why. But the sodium content is about 28 milligrams, and that's equal to the sodium content in 1/4 of an apple. So if someone's doctor said they cannot eat 1/4 of an apple, then don't give them a KINGTON, okay? And I don't know if it has an official number here, but in the rest of the world, low sodium means getting less than 2,000 milligrams per day, so you're a long way away from risking that person. We have other things, but I believe we are going to have to depart at the urging of our hosts.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize because Robert is expected in the other hall where 600 of our colleagues are waiting very patiently for them to arrive. But we do have a question from the floor for you, Robert, which is very interesting. Okay, can you just answer this question?
Good evening, Mr. Robert. On behalf of all of us here, we'd like to thank you very much for that very enlightening sharing and very in-depth, and I think we have all benefited very much from this. My name is Kemi Chua. I'm from Malacca, another state from here. My question is, you see, we've been in this business for some time. We've got more than 200 over products, all to do with health. This is the first time, and we're very happy to note that this product is under your VIDAL, which is a physician's desk reference. See, oftentimes when we meet customers, particularly medical professionals or alike, or medicos or paramedics, they tend to ask if our products are under the physician's desk register, at least. But in this case, we're very happy to note that this is under the VIDAL, but unfortunately, this is recognized by your French physician's register. Malaysia being a Commonwealth country, I believe most of the medical practitioners in the Commonwealth countries refer to the British pharmacopoeia. So my question is whether KINGTON Life Plasma is indeed one of the drugs or named things stated in the British pharmacopoeia acceptable to our context, where it will be made much easier for us to approach medical practitioners in the country. Thank you.
KINGTON Life Plasma or Plasma to KINGTON is not in any physician's desk reference any longer because KINGTON Laboratories chose not to be in the drug business any longer, okay? They do not want people, especially people who are not practitioners, even though practitioners in America and Europe, but in this particular case, it would be very hazardous for you people to be selling a drug because your government would not allow you to sell a drug. That's the first thing. And in America, we couldn't sell a drug. See, the world's laws have changed very seriously because the pharmaceutical companies want the control. And they fear, pharmaceutical companies fear this product will once again become a drug. And a lot of bad things will happen. We don't want you people to be acting like little mini drug distributors, okay? And you shouldn't be, we introduced this initially as a dietary supplement because it's a dietary supplement that does more amazing things perhaps than all of the other dietary supplements you handle. And use this power of it. Yes, it's very frustrating to know that this could probably eliminate in Malaysia, because I know it can do it in America, most of the birth defects. You would want to get it on the cover of every magazine that here is a simple product that can eliminate all the tragedy of birth defects. But you know what? We don't live in that time anymore. You can't do it. So,
Right.
that's the restriction, as sad as it is. You must hold yourself back, and you must grit your teeth that you have a medicine more amazing than antibiotics, more amazing than anti-inflammatories, more amazing than Vioxx and so on, but you can't administer it like that. Will it someday change? I think that KINGTON will be used at some point, again in the future, maybe in 5 years. It will be registered at least as a blood plasma replacement again. But understand, the pharmaceutical companies do not want this product to be used.
So in a nutshell, Robert, we can thank our lucky stars that it's not, okay?
Correct.
So that we can introduce it to the public and all our associates.